I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who suspects her husband is poisoning her. But that's exactly where I found myself one quiet Saturday morning, standing in the kitchen of our suburban home, just outside Denver, staring at a steaming mug of coffee with a strange metallic scent. My name is Claire Jennings. I'm 34, and until a few months ago, I thought I had the kind of life people envied: stable job, nice house, kind husband. I work in communications for a tech firm downtown. It's not glamorous, but I like it. My coworkers respect me. I'm good at what I do. And even though the days are long, I come home to peace. Or at least, I used to think I did. That morning, everything felt calm on the surface. Sunlight coming through the kitchen window, birds outside, the soft hum of the coffee machine finishing its brew. But something didn't feel right. Ethan had already set out the cups when I walked in, his usual cheerful smile fixed in place. He handed me the mug and said he'd tried something new with the beans. It was such a small moment. Most people wouldn't have thought twice. But I did. The smell was sharp, almost sour, not burnt, just wrong. I told myself not to overreact. It could have been the milk, or the filter, or maybe I was just tired. Still, I held the mug too long without taking a sip, pretending to blow on it while my stomach tightened. This wasn't the first time I'd felt this way, this wary. There'd been another morning not long ago when I ended up in urgent care after brunch at Melissa's. They called it a stomach virus. I called it off. Melissa is Ethan's sister. We get along well enough, but she's always been competitive in a way I couldn't quite pin down. She works in public relations for a rival firm, smart, sharp, always one step ahead. Ethan says I overthink things. He says she's just intense, not malicious. But sometimes the line between those two feels paper thin. That Saturday, as I watched the steam rise from the cup, I realized I didn't want to second-guess myself anymore. I didn't want to keep swallowing doubt like sugar. I was supposed to go to Melissa's for brunch. Instead, I stood there wondering whether the person who poured my coffee was hoping I'd feel too sick to go. I didn't know what I would do yet. I only knew one thing. I wasn't imagining it. Not this time. Ethan always looked good on paper. He was the kind of man people described as solid, dependable, thoughtful. He made dinner when I worked late, picked up groceries without being asked, and always remembered my birthday. In public, he held my hand just the right way, smiled just the right amount. But over the past year, something began to shift. He didn't stop doing the things a good husband does. He just stopped being present while doing them. At first, I told myself I was being dramatic. Marriage changes after a few years. People settle, but then I started noticing the way his eyes wandered when I spoke, how his phone seemed permanently glued to his palm. He said it was work, always work. But sometimes I'd walk into a room and the conversation between him and Melissa would stop just a beat too late. Melissa is Ethan's older sister. She works in PR for a rival firm and carries herself like someone always in control of the room. She's charming, polished, intense. When I first joined the family, she welcomed me with open arms. She gave me advice, helped me navigate the politics of the industry, even took me out for drinks when Ethan had to travel. I liked her, I really did. But something in her shifted the moment I landed the Whitestone account. That account changed everything. It was big, high profile, and it had been up for grabs between our two firms. I didn't know she was pitching for it until after I'd already secured it. She smiled when I told her the news, congratulated me, even bought me a gift card to celebrate. But her eyes said something else entirely. That was the first time I ever felt it, the chill beneath the warmth. The strange thing was, after that, Ethan started acting differently too. He wasn't hostile, just withdrawn, like I was suddenly an inconvenience. I tried to talk to him about it one night after dinner. He brushed it off, said I was tired, that I needed to stop overanalyzing everything. Maybe I did, but still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was unraveling under the surface. Then came the illnesses, small things at first. A headache after brunch at Melissa's, nausea after dinner with Ethan, a dizzy spell the morning after he made me breakfast. The doctor said it could be stress, maybe low blood sugar. They ran tests, but nothing came back abnormal. I started keeping notes, just in case. Ethan caught me once jotting something down on my phone. He laughed and said, "What? Are you doing an investigation on me now?" I laughed too, but only with my mouth. We used to be good together. I still remember our first summer as husband and wife. We had no money but plenty of time. We'd sit on the back porch drinking cheap wine and talking about the future like it was a sure thing. He used to kiss my temple while I worked late into the night, whispering, "You're going to change the game someday." I believed him. I believed in us. So when things started to slip, I blamed myself. Maybe I'd gotten too wrapped up in work. Maybe I wasn't fun anymore. Melissa still was. She always had a new story, a new strategy, a new joke that Ethan seemed to find hilarious. I started watching them more closely. The way she touched his arm when she laughed. The way he looked at her when he thought I wasn't paying attention. None of it was obvious. Nothing I could prove. Just shadows that moved too fast to catch. The worst part wasn't even the suspicion. It was the silence that came after. The way I stopped bringing things up because I already knew how it would go. He'd call me paranoid, she'd act confused, and I'd feel foolish. I began to doubt my memory, my body, my instincts. That's the cruelest part of betrayal. It doesn't just make you question them, it makes you question yourself. One night, after I'd been sick for the third time in 2 months, I sat on the bathroom floor and stared at my reflection in the mirror. I didn't look sick, but I didn't look well either. I looked like someone holding their breath in their own home. That's when I started writing things down more carefully. Dates, meals, symptoms. I didn't know what I was looking for. Only that I needed to hold on to something that felt like the truth. From the outside, our marriage still looked good. From the inside, it felt like walking through fog. Nothing to grab onto, nothing solid. And Melissa was always there, hovering just close enough, still smiling, still kind. But every time I turned around, something about her was already leaving the room, like she knew where all this was headed, and I was just catching up. So I started watching, not obsessively, just enough. Enough to notice the cracks no one else seemed to see. Enough to know the person who poured my coffee that morning might not have done it out of habit. Maybe it was calculated. Maybe it was just time. I couldn't be sure of much anymore, but I was sure of one thing. I wasn't imagining this. Not anymore. Melissa's house always looked like it belonged in a magazine. Neutral tones, spotless surfaces, sunlight falling perfectly across the dining table. She greeted me with that same tight-lipped smile, warm enough to pass but never quite touching her eyes. Ethan was already in the kitchen, fussing over the French press like it was a science experiment. I sat down across from Melissa, who was scrolling on her phone, her coffee cup untouched in front of her. Ethan placed a mug in front of me. He said he'd been experimenting with new blends, something rich and bold, just for me. I lifted the cup slowly. The scent hit me before the heat did. There was a strange sharpness to it, faint, but familiar. It took me back to that afternoon last month, lying on a hospital bed with an IV in my arm, while a nurse scribbled notes I couldn't understand. They never found anything. Said it was probably a stomach virus. I knew it wasn't. I kept my expression neutral. My fingers curled around the mug like it was any other morning. Ethan stood behind me, his hand on my shoulder, light but firm. Melissa finally looked up from her phone. She said something about how Ethan was obsessed with coffee lately, how he'd gone down a rabbit hole of grind size and water temperature. She smiled at me like it was a joke we were all in on. I forced a small laugh. The air felt thinner than usual. I set the mug down and reached for my phone, told them I needed to take a quick call for work. Melissa waved toward the study like it was nothing. I stood, careful not to rush, brushing my fingers lightly against the rim of her untouched mug as I passed. My hand shook just slightly. I let my heel catch on the rug and stumbled, just enough to make it believable. The cups clinked. I caught myself, straightened up, and swapped the mugs. "Sorry," I said. "Total klutz move." Melissa raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. Ethan didn't notice, or pretended not to. I walked slowly toward the study, my legs steady even though my pulse wasn't. Once I reached the door, I turned just enough to keep the table in my line of sight. I still hadn't made a call. Melissa picked up the mug, my mug. She sipped without hesitation, and I waited. I didn't want this to be real, but I needed to know. From the study doorway, I watched Melissa lift the cup to her lips. She took a sip, then set it down like nothing was wrong. A few seconds passed in silence. Then I saw it just a small tremor in her fingers as she reached for her phone. She blinked hard, like something in her vision had shifted. Her shoulders tensed. Her posture stiffened. Ethan, still hovering near the kitchen, turned at the sound of her cup clinking against the saucer again. His eyes narrowed, focused on her hand. I took out my phone, started recording without a word. Melissa shifted in her chair, touching her stomach lightly, almost like she didn't want to draw attention to it. Her face turned pale, her lips parted, and I could see her trying to steady her breath. She whispered something I couldn't catch. Then louder, almost a hiss, "James. Something's wrong." Ethan's expression cracked. He stepped forward, concern folding into panic. He asked what she meant. She didn't answer right away. She was gripping the edge of the table now. Then came the moment that split everything. Melissa asked him what he had put in the coffee. His face changed. Just for a second. Then he said it. "That wasn't your cup." His voice dropped so low I almost missed it. But I heard every word. "That wasn't your cup." I stepped into the room then, slowly, deliberately. My phone was still recording. I kept it low, angled toward the table. Ethan turned to me, his face drained of color. Melissa looked between us, her confusion giving way to realization. "You switched them." Her voice cracked. "You knew." I nodded once. I had a hunch. She tried to stand but stumbled, catching herself on the back of the chair. Ethan reached for her. She jerked away. "You said it wouldn't be strong." Her words slurred slightly, just enough to make her miss the meeting. I felt something cold settle in my chest. The meeting, the pitch, the timing suddenly made sense. I asked if they'd been trying to make me sick on purpose. Ethan didn't answer. Melissa leaned forward, both hands flat on the table, as if it might steady her spinning world. She muttered something about the Whitestone account, how she needed me out of the way, just for a little while. I didn't flinch, didn't raise my voice. I just kept the camera on, kept my voice calm. The sirens came into earshot, faint but getting closer. Melissa's breathing grew shallower. Ethan kept saying her name. I stayed still, phone in hand, finally watching the truth show itself without me having to say a word. The ambulance was cold. Melissa lay strapped to the gurney, her face gray, lips parted, eyes half closed. I sat across from her, unmoving, hands folded in my lap. My phone rested on my thigh, still recording until the EMT asked me to shut it off. I did, then looked straight ahead, the whine of the sirens filling the silence she had helped build. At the hospital, they rushed her inside while I followed, answering questions with a calm I didn't fully understand. The nurse asked if Melissa had consumed anything unusual. I said coffee. I also said I suspected something was added to it. She raised her brow, took notes, then disappeared behind swinging doors. I stood alone in the waiting room, watching the second hand of the clock circle over and over. When the attending physician appeared, I was already holding the file I'd been keeping since February. He introduced himself as Dr. Madsen. I handed him the folder without a word. He glanced down at the cover page and then led me to a quieter corner. Inside the folder were charts, printouts, handwritten notes, a timeline of meals, symptoms, locations, ER visits, all cross-referenced against dinners made by Ethan or brunches hosted by Melissa. He flipped through them slowly, eyes narrowing. He said it was thorough. I said it had to be. While he reviewed the notes, I drifted, back to all the moments I'd started second-guessing myself. I remembered March, curled up on the bathroom floor after Ethan made omelets. I remembered April, throwing up in the office bathroom after tea with Melissa. Each time I mentioned it, someone brushed it off. Stress, hormones, coincidence. Ethan said I was too tense. Melissa said I needed to meditate. But I knew something was wrong. That's why I started logging everything. Not because I was paranoid. Because I needed something real. Something I could hold up and say, "Look, this is not in my head." When I brought the file to work, I labeled it Meal Reactions. I emailed it to a hidden folder, backed it up to a private drive. I wasn't sure what I was protecting myself from, just that I needed to be prepared for the moment no one could deny it anymore. Dr. Madsen asked me if I'd ever experienced symptoms after meals with either person. I nodded. 3 times. He said the substance found in Melissa's blood wasn't common, not foodborne, not pharmaceutical, something used in controlled testing, not something you could accidentally ingest. I didn't feel angry then. I didn't feel afraid. I just felt tired, like I'd been holding a heavy truth for months, and now it was finally being acknowledged. It didn't feel good. It just felt quiet, like being alone in a room where the noise finally stopped. When the detective arrived, I didn't need to rehearse anything. I handed her the file. She didn't ask why I had it. She just opened it and started reading, and I stood there, not needing to prove myself anymore. Detective Monroe came back into the consultation room holding an evidence bag. Her expression was unreadable. She set the bag on the table between us. Inside were 3 glass vials, each with small white labels and numbers I didn't recognize. Beside them were folded papers. She unfolded one and slid it toward me. I looked down at Ethan's handwriting. Dates, times, reactions. Notes in the margins like dose too low or slight nausea, but no vomiting. My name wasn't on the page, but it didn't need to be. I knew those days. I remembered what I ate. I remembered how I felt. I remembered wondering if I was just tired. Another paper listed upcoming events: Johnson pitch, Whitestone presentation, Henderson meeting. Next to each one was a chemical code and a predicted outcome. I read one entry 3 times. Increase for stronger effect before Henderson pitch. I felt my chest tighten, not with panic, with precision. Everything I had doubted about myself was documented by someone else. I wasn't his wife. I was his lab report. The detective said the compounds were from a clinical research supplier, not available to the public. Ethan didn't just want me to miss a few meetings. He wanted to control when I failed and how much. I stared at the page, at the quiet cruelty of it. He tracked my symptoms like metrics. He logged side effects. He tweaked dosages based on results. I thought about every time I sat across from him at the dinner table, smiling through stomach cramps, trying to believe him when he said I was just overwhelmed. I remembered the way he kissed my forehead when I said I was too dizzy to drive. He was already writing notes in his phone, recording what worked, what didn't. This wasn't love. This wasn't even hate. It was detachment, a study with variables and control groups. I wasn't a partner. I was a product under evaluation. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just sat there, breathing through the cold wash of understanding. The detective said they were preparing a warrant for the house, that there might be more. I nodded. I wasn't surprised, just hollow. I looked at the paper again. My life, broken into symptoms and outcomes. Every doubt I'd had was justified. Every instinct I'd pushed down was accurate. I had trusted someone who logged my pain in columns and measured my worth in percentages of missed opportunity. The detective asked if I wanted a copy of the notes. I said yes, not for court, not for revenge, for memory. I needed to remember what it looked like when someone slowly tried to erase you with data. That night, I lay in bed with the pages on my nightstand. I didn't sleep. I read them, line by line, letting the truth root itself deeper. I had asked myself for months if I was imagining things. Ethan had spent just as long proving I wasn't. And now I had the proof. Clean, undeniable, chilling. Ethan showed up at the hospital the next morning. He looked like he hadn't slept. Shirt wrinkled, hands shaking, voice low. He asked to speak with me. I didn't answer right away. I stood in the hallway, watching the light shift through the windows, letting the quiet stretch. Then I nodded once. We stepped into the consultation room, the same one where I'd handed the detective my file. The air was cool and stale. Ethan didn't sit. He kept glancing at the floor like he was searching for words that wouldn't come. He finally said he hadn't meant for it to go this far, that Melissa convinced him it would just be temporary, just enough to give me a break. I asked if that's what he called it, poisoning your wife so she misses a meeting. He looked up, startled by how calm I sounded. He said he didn't think of it like that. He said I was burning out, that I was too driven, too focused. He said Melissa had noticed it too, that she was worried. I asked if Melissa was worried about me or worried about losing a client. He didn't respond. I sat down, told him I had listened to the recordings, that I had played them back more times than I care to admit, that I knew exactly when the shift happened. It was right after the Henderson account, right after my name was mentioned in the industry newsletter. Suddenly I was being called brilliant, strategic, a rising star. Suddenly, I wasn't the quiet support anymore. I was the spotlight. He said it made him feel invisible, that every time someone praised me, he felt smaller, that Melissa just gave him the words for what he already feared, that he wasn't enough anymore. I told him none of that explained what he did. That love doesn't turn to poison just because someone else starts shining. I told him I had given him every chance to be honest, that I would have forgiven doubt, but I couldn't forgive calculation. He sat down then, slowly, shoulders hunched. He said he had wanted me to rest, just miss a few meetings, nothing serious, just enough so I'd need him again, so I'd lean on him. I said I never stopped needing him. I just stopped depending on his approval, and maybe that scared him more than success ever did. He asked if I thought he was a monster. I said no, I thought he was weak, that he chose control over courage, that he stood by and let someone else decide how far to go. He whispered that Melissa pushed him, that she said we needed to protect the family, protect the business, that I was becoming a threat. I said I wasn't a threat. I was just doing well. That's not the same thing. But when people fear your strength, they start turning it into a weapon, even if you never aimed it. He looked at me like he was seeing me clearly for the first time. Then he said he missed the girl I used to be, the one who looked up to him, the one who asked for help. I told him she's still here. She just doesn't ask anymore, not because she's proud, because she learned the cost of trusting the wrong people. He started to cry, quiet tears, no words, just the sound of someone unraveling. I didn't touch him. I didn't yell. I just sat there and let the truth hang in the air. All the things he didn't say over the last year, all the things I had tried to ignore, now they were right there between us, no longer hidden, no longer deniable. He asked if I would testify. I said yes, not out of hate, but because silence protects the wrong people, and I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. He stood to leave. I watched him go, shoulders sagging, steps slow. I didn't feel powerful. I felt grounded, like the earth had finally settled beneath me after months of shaking. Later, I walked past Melissa's hospital room. She didn't speak. She looked away when I entered. Her face was pale, her hands twitching from whatever remained in her system. She said I had ruined everything, that I took the one thing she built from nothing. I told her I didn't take anything. I just showed up, I did the work, and people noticed. She said she didn't mean to hurt me. I told her intentions don't erase impact. She asked what I wanted now. I said I wanted peace. I said I wanted my life back, not the one they planned for me, the one I'd been building on my own. And then I walked out, not angry, not broken, just ready to start again, on my own terms. The sky outside the hospital was starting to change, soft streaks of orange curling into pale blue. I walked out slowly, the automatic doors sliding shut behind me like a chapter closing. The hallway had been quiet, but out here, the air felt real again, crisp, open, mine. I didn't look back. The legal team had what they needed. Between the recordings, the lab results, and the files from Ethan's office, the case was solid. There was nothing left to explain. I had already told the truth. Now it would carry itself forward. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed. A new email lit up the screen. It was from my boss. The subject line was simple. Henderson account still yours. We believe in you. My hand stayed still on the wheel for a few seconds before I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. They believed me, not because I begged, because I had shown them the truth. A month passed quickly. Quiet mornings, long walks, therapy appointments I kept for myself. I didn't post about it. I didn't reach out to old friends. I just focused. I let myself heal in the small ways. Clean sheets, warm food, silence without suspicion. And then came the presentation. The Henderson boardroom was made of glass and light. 10 people sat around the table, suits, tablets, coffee cups. I stood at the head, calm and prepared. I opened my deck and began. My voice was clear. My message was grounded. I didn't rush. I didn't perform. I told a story, a strategy, a future, something real. And when I finished, they didn't say anything right away. They just looked at me. Then one of the senior partners stood up and started clapping. The others followed. They didn't know what I'd been through, but they saw who I was now, and that was enough. Afterward, I didn't celebrate, I just drove home. The house felt quiet in the best way. I walked into the kitchen, turned on the kettle, and waited for the water to boil. I opened the window above the sink. The late afternoon breeze rolled in, soft and familiar. I made a cup of tea and sat by the table. No noise, no weight, just space. I didn't think about Melissa, or Ethan, or what would happen to them next. That part wasn't mine to carry anymore. I had done what I needed to do. I had chosen truth, even when it hurt, especially when it hurt. As the tea steeped, I looked out the window. The trees swayed gently. A neighbor's dog barked in the distance. It all felt very small, but it also felt full, like I had stepped back into my life instead of watching it from the sidelines. I took a sip, warm and sharp. They tried to erase me, but I was never going anywhere. I used to think that being doubted by people you love was just a phase, something that would pass if you were patient enough, if you proved yourself again and again. But the truth is, some people don't want proof. They want control, and they'll twist your reality until you don't trust your own eyes. If you've ever felt like you were overreacting, like maybe you imagined the cold tone, the shift in energy, the convenient excuses that pile up, I get it. I've been there, second-guessing every gut feeling because I didn't want to seem dramatic. But your gut isn't loud because it's wrong. It's loud because it knows. I'm not here to tell you to burn bridges or chase revenge. I'm here to remind you that clarity is powerful. Pay attention to the small things, the way you feel after certain conversations, the way your body reacts when you're around people who say they love you but leave you feeling smaller. Document what doesn't feel right. You don't have to show anyone. Just start noticing. Trusting yourself is a muscle. It grows every time you listen instead of dismiss. Every time you choose peace over apology. There's no shame in stepping back from people who make your light feel dangerous. There's no guilt in protecting your space. You don't owe anyone silence if that silence costs you your sanity. It took me a long time to understand that I wasn't the problem. I was just inconvenient to people who relied on my doubt to stay powerful. But once I saw it for what it was, I stopped shrinking. I stopped explaining. And I started documenting the truth. You don't need anyone's permission to survive. You don't need proof to listen to yourself. But if you're gathering it, I see you. I know how heavy that quiet fight can be. You're not crazy. You're not dramatic. You're careful. You're strong. And if you've ever felt erased, I see you. You're not alone.